On a warm August morning in Washington, D.C., thousands of Sikhs gathered. The streets were calm, the mood resolute. Families walked hand in hand. Elders carried the weight of memory, while children carried the promise of a future. No angry slogans were raised, no weapons were brandished. What they carried instead were ballots. Quiet slips of paper that spoke more powerfully than any weapon ever could. This was not just an event, it was a statement. It was not rebellion for rebellion's sake. It was not defiance born out of chaos. It was something far deeper, a collective act of remembrance and an act of hope. For the Sikh community, memory is both a source of pain and strength. The burning trains of 1984, the pogroms in Delhi, the mass disappearances in Punjab during the so-called counter-insurgency, decades of state surveillance and profiling, these are not distant echoes. They are scars carried in every Sikh household, passed down in stories, in silences, in grief. For too long, their voices were silenced in courts, mocked in legislatures, and their identity reduced to a mere security concern. But in Washington, D.C., those voices finally found a platform. They did not shout in anger. They did not demand through violence. They simply voted with purpose, with dignity, and with an unshakable belief that their struggle for justice is far from over. The referendum was not about rewarding maps. It was about restoring dignity. It was not without dividing nations, it was about reclaiming belonging. When India turned its guns on the very community that once filled its military with pride, it was not just a betrayal of trust. It was a betrayal of the democratic ideals it claimed to uphold. For decades, India has tried to erase this story. It has painted the Sikh call for Khalistan as extremism, as terrorism, as a foreign conspiracy. But none of those labels explain what the world saw in Washington. Children holding their grandparents' hands as they walked to vote. Women in traditional attire proudly showing their inked fingers. Elders who once fled Punjab now standing in line to cast symbolic votes for its future. This was ballots versus bullets. A moral confrontation between two opposing worldviews. One that believes in the power of democratic expression and another that relies on state coercion. One that invites dialogue and another that imposes silence. And when faced with the simple strength of the ballot, the bullet looked small, insecure, and outdated. For Sikhs, this was not just about politics. It was about survival. It was about identity. For centuries, the Sikh community has fought for justice, often paying the price in blood. From resisting Mughal persecution to standing against colonial rule, Sikhs have always been at the forefront of defending the oppressed. Yet, in post-independence India, they found themselves betrayed by the very state they helped build. The events of 1984 were not an accident of history. They were a deliberate attempt to break a people's spirit. But Washington, D.C. showed that the spirit was never broken. It has endured silently, patiently, waiting for a moment when it could speak without fear of bullets, raids, and prisons. That moment came with ballots. The symbolism of this referendum was powerful. It told the world that Khalistan is not just a slogan shouted in anger, nor a conspiracy whispered in exile. It is a living idea, carried by generations who refuse to forget their dead, who refused to accept injustices as destiny. The referendum gave shape to that idea in a way no bullet could destroy. What happened in Washington is not the end of the story. It is not even the climax. It is a chapter, but a chapter that cannot be ignored. For India, it is a reminder that oppression does not erase memory. For the world, it is evidence that the Sikh struggle is not a relic of the past, but a living, breathing movement. And for Sikhs themselves, it is a reassurance that they are not alone, that their voice carries weight, that their ballots carry power. The ballot is quiet. It does not march. It does not fight. It does not bleed, but it endures. Bullets may silence for a moment, but ballots keep echoing across generations. That is why what happened in Washington matters. It was a community choosing the pen over the sword, not because they were weak, but because they were strong enough to believe in justice. India may have tried to crush the Khalistan movement with bullets, but in Washington, D.C., the Sikh nation answered. Not with violence, not with vengeance, but with votes. And this time, the world listened. Ballots versus bullets. Memory versus erasure. Dignity versus coercion. In that quiet act of voting, the Sikh struggle turned a page in history. And though the road ahead is long and uncertain, one truth became clear: bullets can wound, but ballots endure.